Has anyone ever played Until Dawn? It is an interactive survival horror game from 2015, made by Supermassive Games. They are a British game developer that are behind games like Little Big Planet and the Dark Pictures anthology. They have been developing games since 2009. Until Dawn was their first horror game. The game is interactive because you choose the path the characters are going, and depending on your choices, that is how the game ends. You do get a lot of choices, and depending on your choices, you get a different ending. So you can't play the game through a lot of times and get a different ending every single time.
How do you rate our chances of survival?
I'm trying not to think about it.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Shit. Sam. Run. Run!
It was a more special concept in 2015 than it is now, but the gameplay was fun and the story was quite good. Now it seems we are getting a live-action version of that game, with Sony Pictures distributing and Screen Gems producing. What is interesting is the choice of the Swedish director David F. Sandberg. He is not new to horror because he directed Lights Out and the best sequel to Annabelle Creation. Outside of horror, he directed both Shazam movies. So everything he's made so far has been good except for Shazam 2. So I think he can bring out the qualities of the game into a good horror movie, because the game itself has very cinematic qualities to it. They also used real actors for the game, with motion capture technology, with the most known actors in the game being Hayden Panettiere and Rami Malek. Rami Malek, who later became an Oscar winner playing Freddie Mercury. But this was some time before that. I think at the time he was mostly known for the show Mr. Robot. It would be interesting if they could bring back the cast from the game into this adaptation, which I actually think they might do. The game centers on 8 friends trapped together on a remote mountain retreat, only to discover they are not alone. They must navigate dread and fear to make it through the night in one piece. The game takes place in the mountains of Canada, and the game is very atmospheric, taking place during one night, a very snowy night in the mountains. There is a secret that happens between 2 of the female characters in a flashback. In current time, these friends, they go to the cabin and some weird things start to happen. You get to play as each character for a moment during the game. And your main quest is to make sure that every character in the game survives. So depending on how many you manage to save and who they are, that is something that the game takes into account, and depending on that, the game can end in different various ways. So it is an interesting game. I really suggest playing it before the movie. It is not that often that we get a horror movie based on a horror game. Yes, it's happened with Resident Evil and Silent Hill, but all those attempts were awful. And this game has a quite special concept. Being an interactive game, it can really work on the big screen. Not really the big screen, I have a suggestion for that actually. I would suggest to Sony that they release this movie on a streaming platform, so that the movie also can be an interactive thing. I think what Netflix did with Black Mirror Bandersnatch was good. For anyone that doesn't know, Black Mirror is a TV series, but they made a movie on it and dropped it on Netflix. And it was an interactive experience. because you use the remote to make the choices for the characters in the movie. And me and my cousin tried that out maybe a year ago, over a year ago, and we had really fun with that. And the makers of that movie really did a great job.
Bandersnatch.
Vander what?
Bandersnatch.
Bandersnatch is a unique Black Mirror story in that it's interactive. You, the viewer, get to decide what's going to happen. It's actually quite complicated behind the scenes, but for the viewer, it's fairly straightforward. You are given choices. Will you go out of the door or will you jump out of the window? But there's myriad sort of timelines and story branches you can go down.
It was a fun experience to control how the story plays out in a movie. But we did cheat in some ways, just because we weren't satisfied with how the story was going for the character. So we made different choices in the earlier stages of the movie. But I have to say it was a very fun experience to have a movie interactive like that. And that I would suggest that they do with this movie because it really fits, because the game was interactive, so why not make the movie interactive too? And I think with the right marketing they could have more people watch the movie, because the brand isn't really that known outside of PlayStation players. So it would also be a good way to introduce new people to the game, make your audience bigger, make the brand bigger. There's only one game so far, so if you introduce more people to the first game, maybe you could make a sequel in the end, a game sequel. Trying to expand it into a franchise maybe, in both TV and in gaming. I really liked the style of the first game, it was really nice. Snowy mountains, cabins, and a forest around them, mountains around them, and a very spooky setting.
Of the dreadful tragedy that took place on Mount Washington. Annie Klein was in charge of the investigation.
Thanks for having me, Marty.
Listeners, an update on Hannah and Beth Washington, the twins who are still missing.
1 year ago tonight, the Washington girls left the safety of their parents' lodge and headed out into a snowstorm.
Foul play.
Not officially, no. There is one individual we're considering as a person of interest, but his whereabouts are currently unknown. He has an interesting history with the Washington family. He had warned them against pursuing their construction project and claimed the land was sacred to his forefathers.
You know, there is still the old sanatorium on the mountain. Could he be hiding there?
My officers did search the grounds, but the girls themselves couldn't have made it that far.
Something about that mountain seems to breed tragic events.
More than you know, Marty.
Well, thank you for joining us, Annie. With all the Washingtons tonight, their son Josh, on this, the anniversary of the mysterious disappearance of Hannah and Beth Washington.
One of the best gaming experiences I ever had. And when I do game, I do prefer to play horror games that are story-based single player. And this game is one of my all-time favorites. So having a director like David F. Sandberg really makes me excited. I think he can become one of the best horror directors ever. He's made 3 movies. That's still early to say what will happen, but with the quality of the 3 movies he's made, he can become a really big director in horror. Horror is his roots when he started doing the short movies on YouTube, and I think he would add a lot to this project. The game is already very cinematic, so it won't be a big stretch to do the game into movie form. The game is basically an interactive movie, just with video game graphics that are a bit dated now. The game was originally a PlayStation 3 game, but it got delayed and released later on PlayStation 4. But when it comes to gameplay, it is a very interesting concept. So hopefully we'll get a good movie out of it. I'm really excited, but we will see what will happen. Hopefully it doesn't get cancelled from now to the release date. We will just have to see. If you liked this video, please like, share and subscribe. And this has been Boogeyman Cinema. Thank you for watching. What did you think about the Until Dawn game, and what do you think will happen with the movie? Will it be good or not?